Welcome to Confessions from the Shaded Lantern. Forget the pleasantries. Let's plunge straight into the instant my world fractured into a million jagged pieces. The melody was Finally by Aretha Franklin, a cruel irony given it was meant to be our anthem. I stood just beyond the dance floor's vibrant edge, clutching a glass of lukewarm ginger ale, a phantom weight in my hand as I watched the woman I'd pledged my life to effortlessly spin in another man's embrace. His hands were exactly where mine had once rested, a familiar comfort I no longer provided. Her laughter, that carefree burst of sound, was the same joyful peal she'd offered the night I knelt and proposed. And her gaze, those captivating sapphire eyes, never once swept the room for me. She danced with him as if I were a forgotten ghost, a non-existent entity, as if this heart-wrenching betrayal wasn't unfolding in raw, agonizing detail before my very eyes. No, I didn't shout. I didn't weep. I didn't storm out in a fit of rage like those sensationalized internet videos. I simply blinked, inhaling the cloying mixture of designer perfume and cheap champagne, and retreated. Away from her, away from them, away from the elaborate deception I'd been living. 10 paces from the ornate double doors, my phone gave a silent tremor. 15 steps later, it began to ring, a jarring intrusion. At 20 steps, her voice, laced with feigned concern, whispered in my ear. "Where are you going, Masumilo?" she inquired. It was just a dance, nothing more. She spoke the words with such effortless dismissal, as if they hadn't just rewinded our entire shared history, erasing every quiet night we'd spent slow dancing in our kitchen to no music at all. As if it didn't matter that he wasn't merely some guy. This was Trent Rivers, the same colleague who'd pinged her with a "you up" at 11:47 p.m. last month, only to be blocked after my firm, albeit gentle, confrontation. I quickened my pace. Her high heels clacked behind me, a persistent echo. Heads began to turn. What if everything you believe about a loved one is a meticulously crafted lie? That's when her carefully constructed facade finally cracked. "You're making a scene," Celeste hissed, gripping my arm just outside the venue's entrance. I truly looked at her then, the faint shimmer of glitter beneath her eyes, her lipstick just a whisper smudge, still breathless from their shared dance. "Good," I responded, my voice remarkably steady. "Now you understand how I've felt for months." She offered no reply, not because she lacked words, but because she knew, in that precise moment, that I finally saw it all. The emotional chasm, the spurious late meetings, the phone always turned face down. I didn't go back inside. I climbed into my car alone, and as I sat there, hands clenched on the steering wheel, a fragile, pleading part of me yearned for her to come rushing out, to tap on the window, to cry, to beg. But what she did next, however, was something I never could have predicted. It wasn't just unexpected, it changed everything. The car's interior was thick with silence, punctuated only by the frantic beat of my own heart. I hadn't even started the engine. I was simply anchored to the wheel, clinging to it as if it could tether me to reality. A full 20 minutes bled away before the passenger door clicked open. Celeste slid in, wordlessly. No tears, no apology, not even a flicker of guilt on her face. Just the heavy silence and the lingering scent of sweat and expensive wine clinging to her emerald green dress. She avoided my gaze, staring straight ahead, like a child awaiting an inevitable scolding. I finally started the engine, not because I had a destination in mind, but because I couldn't bear another second of feeling like a phantom in my own life. As we pulled out of the parking lot, she finally broke the quiet. "So, are we going to discuss this?" she asked, folding her arms tightly across her chest, a practiced gesture of defiance. My eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. "What exactly is there to discuss?" Her voice ratcheted up an octave. "Oh, come on, Milo. I danced. That's all. You stormed off like a petulant teenager. You're the one who made it awkward, not me." I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I made it awkward. She had danced with a man who previously bombarded her DMs with fire emojis and suggestive hard-eye emoticons. A man she'd sworn was nothing more than a casual acquaintance, and she'd done it in full view of all our mutual friends, People who now regarded me with a blend of pity and discomfort, as if I were the punchline to a cruel joke. I felt my throat constrict with 1,000 unspoken words, yet I didn't know how to articulate them. Confrontation had never been my strong suit. It was why I forgave too easily, why I let so many things slide. It's why I'd allowed her to talk her way out of every sticky situation, including that night I found her texting him at 1:01 a.m., claiming she was merely helping him cope with his breakup. But now something profound had shifted. Perhaps it was the almost intimate look she'd given him on that dance floor. Or maybe it was how utterly natural it all seemed to her, as if she wasn't betraying me at all, because in her mind, I simply no longer mattered. When we arrived home, she walked directly to the bedroom, kicked off her heels, and began wiping away her makeup, as if it were just another Friday night. I stood frozen in the hallway. "Why him?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She paused, then offered a dismissive shrug. "Because he makes me feel desired." The words struck me like a physical blow. She hadn't even flinched as she uttered them. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I simply nodded, turned, and walked back outside, locking the door firmly behind me. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I didn't sleep at all. I remained in my car, parked at the silent edge of town, replaying that wretched dance over and over until the first sliver of sunrise. Here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a quiet, insidious drip. And when I finally checked my phone, I discovered a message I was never meant to see, one that utterly shattered what little resolve I had left. The message illuminated the screen at 3:42 a.m. It wasn't addressed to me. In fact, it was explicitly not meant for my eyes. But when your wife uses the same tired excuse, "I'm too tired to talk tonight," and leaves her phone buzzing face up while she's sound asleep in your shared bed, it's astonishing what the universe will place directly into your lap. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't digging. It was simply there, glowing like a malevolent knife in the dark. "You were incredible tonight," it read. She couldn't take her eyes off you, followed by a winking emoji and, disturbingly, a photograph of her heel resting on his shoe under a dinner table, taken during the very party that same night. I just sat there staring at it, my face completely numb. The message was from Trent. Of course it was Trent. And it made everything feel disturbingly intentional, as if I were merely an extra in their sordid romantic drama. The backup actor who delivers 2 lines and then vanishes before the credits roll. Every fiber of my being screamed to hurl her phone across the room, to storm in and unleash a torrent of fury that would make her ears ring. But instead, I simply leaned back against the couch, silent, and watched her sleep. I studied her rhythmic breathing, the way a lock of hair clung to her cheek, the steady rise and fall of her chest, as if nothing had happened. How does one become so comfortable lying beside someone while actively plotting with another? By morning, she acted as if everything were perfectly normal. Eggs sizzling, coffee brewing, that fake, airy humming she always did when she was pretending to be domestic. I observed her from across the kitchen island, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't recognize the woman standing before me. So I tried something different. I played along. I smiled. I asked if she wanted to go out later. I even offered to swing by that new cafe she kept pretending not to care about. Her eyes lit up. She readily agreed. And just like that, she assumed I was over it. She believed I was stupid enough to swallow her version of the previous night. But what she didn't know, what I meticulously ensured she wouldn't discover, was that I had already printed the screenshot. I had already forwarded it to my secure email. And I had already scheduled a meeting with someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who knew a thing or two about unearthing hidden truths. Stop. This is where the game truly changed. If she wanted to act like nothing happened, then fine. I'd let her reside in her convenient fantasy just a little longer, because the game she thought she was winning, it had already fundamentally shifted. I met with Darian Walker around noon. He wasn't a detective, not officially, but he used to conduct background checks and asset tracing for high-profile corporate clients. We hadn't truly connected since college. Yet when I called and explained my need for clarity, Without confrontation, he didn't hesitate. We met at a quiet, tucked-away pub near the outskirts of town, a place where anonymity was guaranteed. I looked a wreck. Same shirt from the night before, eyes bloodshot from replaying that message 100 times in my head. Darian didn't pry. He simply nodded, took the screenshot from my trembling hand, and promised to see what else lay buried beneath the surface. And then he posed the question I hadn't been prepared to answer. Do you want the truth, or do you want peace? I didn't respond immediately because honestly, I wasn't sure anymore. A desperate part of me longed to return to how things were before the dance, before the text, before the slow, agonizing unraveling of everything I believed in. But another part of me, the smaller, quieter voice that usually went ignored, whispered that peace built on a foundation of lies wasn't real peace at all. But how do you choose when both paths promise a different kind of pain? When I returned home that evening, Celeste was sprawled on the couch, legs crossed, phone in hand, a slight smile playing on her lips. She didn't even flinch when I walked in. She simply offered a casual, "Hey, babe," and continued scrolling. It was so rehearsed, so disarmingly casual, it made me nauseous. I sat down opposite her and asked what she and Trent had discussed after I'd left. Her fingers froze just for a fleeting second, and then came the laugh, the one she always used when she thought I was being melodramatic. "What? Milo, you're still dwelling on this?" she said, rolling her eyes with practiced disdain. "We barely talked. He just asked why you vanished." I nodded slowly. "Right. And did you tell him why I left?" She tilted her head, a hint of impatience in her posture. "I told him you felt awkward. Honestly, Milo, if you're going to keep spiraling over nothing, we're going to have a much bigger problem than a stupid party." There it was, the pivot. Somehow I was now the issue. Not the dancing, not the texting, not the incriminating photo. Me, my overthinking, my spiraling, but I didn't bite. I simply informed her I had a work trip coming up, an excuse to grant myself the space to think, to breathe without her presence infecting every corner of my mind. She seemed relieved almost too quickly, as if the notion of my absence was a small, unexpected gift. Why her dismissiveness wasn't a sign of weakness, but a glaring red flag I'd missed for too long. That night she kissed me before bed, but it wasn't like she used to. No warmth, no lingering affection, just an oppressive press of lips that felt more like a habit than genuine intimacy. And while she slept, I began making a list. Not of things I would do, but of things I had blindly ignored. The hushed messages, the unexplained bursts of laughter over texts, the sudden password changes on her devices, the business dinners I was never invited to. All of it was there, laid bare. I had been willfully blind, but not anymore. By morning, Darian texted me 2 words that would irrevocably change everything. "We need to talk." When I met Darian again, he wasted no time. We sat in the same booth, same stale-smelling pub, but this time his expression was starkly different. He slid a manila envelope across the table, a gesture straight out of some gritty noir film, but the reality contained within was far worse than fiction. Photos, precise timestamps, credit card records, even snippets of audio. I stared down at a printed receipt for a downtown hotel, dated 2 weeks before the party, with Celeste's signature for a 2-night stay. Not a work trip, no conference. Just a room and a minibar charge that included 2 glasses of Merlot and 1 male-sized bathrobe. I swallowed hard, desperately trying to maintain my composure. "Are you certain?" I managed, though the question was utterly pointless. Darian simply nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Same guy. Trent checked in 15 minutes after her. Left 3 hours before checkout." He paused, allowing the information to sink in. "They've been meeting up for months, Milo. Prepare yourself. The truth, when it came, hit harder than any lie." It's strange what betrayal does to your brain. You'd expect an explosion, shouts, shattered objects. But instead, I felt nothing. A numbness so profound, it made me question if I was even still truly in my own body. I thanked him, paid for his time, and walked out into the harsh sunlight like an automaton, the envelope tucked under my arm like a college essay I wasn't ready to turn in. Back home, Celeste was in the kitchen, reheating leftovers. She greeted me with the same empty smile, asking how my meeting had gone. I told her it was uneventful. I told her I was tired. I told her I needed a shower. She didn't notice the tremor in my voice. She didn't notice that I walked directly to my home office and meticulously hid the envelope behind the bookshelf, nestled within a hollowed-out copy of The Great Gatsby, her favorite novel. The irony was not lost on me. Over the next 72 hours, I didn't sleep. I barely spoke, but I did watch. I noticed every nuanced lie in her voice. The way she answered calls only in the bathroom. The way she instinctively flipped her phone over every time it buzzed. I meticulously counted the seconds between messages. I observed her patterns like a scientist studying a virulent strain, and that's exactly what it felt like. A sickness growing in my home, feeding off my silence. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I had one more crucial step. For 72 hours, I observed her every move, preparing for the inevitable reckoning. You see, I had started replying to Trent's texts, not as myself, but as her. I'd created a sophisticated messaging mirror app on her laptop, something I rigged with Darian's ingenious help. She had absolutely no clue, and the messages I sent, they weren't what you'd expect. No jealousy, no overt rage, just a carefully cultivated curiosity, leading questions, innocent bait. And Trent predictably took it. He confessed everything, down to the night she told him I was completely checked out of the marriage, that I didn't touch her anymore, and that he made her feel alive. I saved every word, every line, every sickeningly manipulative sentence exchanged between two people who thought I'd never notice. And then, just before dawn, something inside me finally broke free. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to burn down the illusion, one undeniable truth at a time. The plan I concocted was devious, quiet, and absolutely lethal to her illusions. A cold fury ignited within me, unlike anything I'd ever known. I waited until the night of her company's quarterly dinner to make my move. The timing was impeccable. She was already dressed to impress, her hair perfectly curled, that emerald green gown hugging her figure as if begging for attention from anyone but her husband. She stood by the mirror, adjusting her earrings, utterly oblivious to the meticulous preparations I'd made behind her back. I told her I'd meet her there, claiming a last-minute call I simply had to take. She didn't question it. I had, after all, always been the one to adjust to her schedule. Always the one bending, always the one shrinking to make room for her perpetual spotlight. When she finally left, I didn't follow her. I drove directly to the upscale restaurant where the event was being held and handed a discreet flash drive to the manager. Darian had secured my access to their system earlier. I didn't want drama. I simply wanted the unvarnished truth. The flash drive contained everything: the incriminating texts, the hotel receipts, a short audio file of Trent Rivers himself, laughing, bragging about how married women are easier because they already know how to lie. It was all precisely synced to autoplay on the restaurant's main projector during dessert, timed perfectly for when the lights would dim. I sat in a separate booth near the back, obscured from her view, but with a clear, unobstructed sightline to her table. She looked radiant, confident, completely unaware that the ground beneath her was about to crack wide open. I felt no guilt, only a profound sense of clarity. I had spent far too long trying to protect someone who had never, not once, extended that same protection to me. I once heard a story about a carefully constructed house of cards. Tonight, the faintest breeze would bring hers tumbling down. Then it happened. The massive screen flickered to life. Laughter died. Conversations hushed. And the first screenshot appeared in massive resolution. Her message: "I'm just pretending for now. He doesn't even touch me anymore." A photograph immediately followed, her foot nestled intimately under the table with Trent's. And then his voice, laughing, confessing, bragging. The entire room froze. Her confident smile vanished instantly. She looked around, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. People whispered. Some gasped outright. One of her senior coworkers actually stood up and quietly walked out. The moment stretched, slow and silent and utterly brutal. She knew. She knew this wasn't some unfortunate mistake. And then she saw me. I didn't hide. I rose from my booth, locking eyes with her from across the stunned restaurant. And for the first time in months, I saw genuine fear in her expression. Not guilt, not sorrow. Fear. The stark realization that I was no longer her doormat, that I had seen it all, and worse, I had revealed it all. Could she ever truly recover from this self-inflicted wound? She started toward me, pushing through chairs and wide-eyed colleagues. "Milo, what the hell is this?" she hissed when she reached me, her voice barely above a desperate whisper. "Truth," I said calmly, stepping past her. "Something you stopped giving me a very long time ago." Her eyes brimmed with burgeoning panic. "You're ruining my career." "No," I replied, continuing my walk toward the exit. "You ruined everything. I merely turned on the lights." I walked out without a backward glance. I didn't wait for the inevitable fallout. I didn't care about the whispers. I had finally peeled off the mask she wore so effortlessly. But I wasn't done. There was one more thing left to do, and it would be the part she never saw coming. The video went undeniably viral, not on some massive public platform, but within her highly insular industry. It turns out when you publicly humiliate your husband and shamelessly betray your marriage with a coworker who then boasts about it in recorded voice notes, word spreads with astonishing speed, especially when that coworker also happens to be aggressively vying for a promotion that now seemed entirely out of reach. By the time I arrived home that night, her office had already received an anonymous email with the video attached. I hadn't sent it. I didn't have to. Someone at the dinner must have recorded it or managed to grab the files from the restaurant system. Either way, the fire had already ignited, and I had absolutely no intention of extinguishing it. Celeste arrived home well after midnight, and for once, she had no lies prepared, no excuses, no performative tears. She simply stood in the doorway, heels dangling from one hand, mascara streaked down her cheeks, staring at me like she was awaiting a final verdict. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I simply continued packing the suitcase I'd started earlier that evening. She finally broke the heavy silence. "Milo, please, we can fix this." That made me laugh, an actual bitter, involuntary sound. Fix this? We couldn't even fix dinner without her pretending to check her emails every 2 minutes. I zipped the suitcase slowly, deliberately, and looked her dead in the eyes. "Fix it with Trent," I said. "He seems to understand what you need far better than I ever did." She stepped closer, reaching for my arm, her hand trembling. "I messed up. I wasn't thinking straight. You were distant. You stopped trying." "You're right," I conceded. "I stopped trying to keep you happy the moment I realized you weren't trying to stay loyal." The tears came then. Too late. Too empty. She begged me to stay, said it was just a mistake, that the messages were taken out of context, that she never meant for it to go that far. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything or demand she explain herself. I simply stood there, suitcase in hand, and allowed the crushing weight of her choices to fill the room. But before I left, I pulled something from my jacket pocket, a small, unassuming envelope, and placed it on the kitchen counter. Inside was a printed message from Trent's phone, one she hadn't seen, one I hadn't even shown Darian. "You really think he'll ever grow a spine? Lowell, he's a puppy in your purse." Her hands trembled when she read it. Her face went utterly pale. And that was it. No words left, no power, just deafening silence. I walked out, got into my car, and drove away without a single glance in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, the silence in my life felt profoundly peaceful instead of painful. This wasn't just walking away. It was reclaiming a life lost. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't merely disappearing. I had something planned for the next morning, something truly final. Because walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a very different chapter. But the deepest cut was yet to come, a secret kept even from my closest confidant. The next morning I didn't awaken to chaos. No barrage of frantic texts, no pleading voicemails, just sunlight pouring through a hotel window and the quiet hum of a life finally unburdened. It felt surreal waking up alone for the first time in years and not dreading the day ahead. I held my phone, half expecting some explosive apology or manipulative plea. Instead, there was a single message from Celeste. No paragraphs, no drama, just, I deserve this. And for once, she was absolutely right. I spent the morning strolling through a local park, sipping bitter hotel coffee, and breathing in the profound stillness I had forgotten existed. I wasn't grieving her anymore. I was grieving the version of myself I had lost while desperately trying to keep our marriage from falling apart. That man, the one who tolerated too much, forgave too quickly, and spoke too softly, he was finally gone. In his place stood someone quieter, yes, but undeniably stronger. Someone who knew precisely what he would never allow again. By the end of the week, I had signed the lease on a small, sunlit apartment. Nothing ostentatious, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture I selected, every coffee mug I placed on the shelf, it all felt like a reclaiming of space, a reclaiming of dignity. Darian checked in a few times, and I thanked him properly with a rare bottle of whiskey and a letter I'll never let anyone else read. He'd given me more than just information. He'd given me invaluable perspective. Celeste never attempted to win me back after that. She didn't show up at my new door or beg for reconciliation. She knew it was unequivocally over. I believe the public exposure made it impossible for her to deny what she had done. She quietly transferred her half of our joint savings account, sent a lawyer to handle the divorce papers, and vanished from my life without fireworks. Just a slow, fading silence. And you know what? I'm truly okay with that. I joined a book club a month later. Yes, I know how that sounds. But someone there, a woman named Bronwyn Cohen, with a laugh you can feel resonate in your chest, told me something I will never forget. She said, "Sometimes walking away isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-respect." And for the first time in a very long time, I believed it with every fiber of my being. So no, this isn't a story about revenge. This is a story about recognition, about finally seeing what I had stubbornly refused to see for too long, and ultimately choosing myself over a meticulously constructed illusion. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, I promise you, you don't have to remain that way. You're allowed to walk away, and sometimes when you do, everything changes. Thank you for being here. If you've ever had a moment where you chose yourself, share it in the comments below, or tell us about a moment in history where someone's quiet, decisive exit changed everything. We genuinely love to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to Confessions from the Shaded Lantern for more powerful stories. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Don't let your story end with regret. Act now. Choose yourself.